Tax treaties are intended to encourage economic interaction between two countries, by each country removing tax barriers for residents of the other country. Residents of a non-treaty country can indirectly obtain tax treaty benefits by investing through a company resident in one of the treaty countries. The challenge for governments is how to draft tax treaties so they only benefit genuine arrangements. Courts have faced a similar challenge when interpreting tax treaties. Two groundbreaking court cases demonstrate early attempts to address this challenge. Laying down the foundations for modern anti-avoidance rules. In 1963, a US company borrowed money from its Bahamas parent at 4% interest. This interest was subject to US withholding tax. The next year, the Bahamas parent transferred the loan to its Honduran subsidiary in exchange for a loan of the same amount and carrying the same interest. The dispute focused on whether the interest paid to the Honduran company was exempt from US withholding tax. Under the US tax treaty with Honduras, interest received by a Honduran company was exempt from US withholding tax. The court held that the interest was not received by the Honduran company. The judge realized that you couldn't just read these words according to their ordinary meaning, and the treaty didn't provide a definition. You had to read them in the context of the tax treaty. This meant that the interest had to be received by the Honduran company as its own. In legal terms, complete dominion and control was required. So not temporary physical possession of the funds, or an obligation to transmit the interest to its Bahamas parent. The judge concluded that the Honduran company was no more than a conduit for the interest. The judge also applied a business purpose test, finding that the Honduran company served no valid economic or business purpose. After all, it made no profit, and all three companies belonged to the same group. The court also applied a kind of substance over form test, and concluded that the interest was in substance received by the Bahamas parent and not the Honduran company. Two European bus manufacturing companies wanted to expand into the North American market. One was a British company, Henleys, and the other was a Swedish company, Volvo. In 1995, they decided to jointly buy a Canadian bus manufacturing company, Prevost. If they bought the shares directly, Henleys would have to pay 10% Canadian withholding tax on any profits Prevost distributed, and Volvo would have to pay 15%. This was better than the 25% that Canada would have charged if there were no tax treaties with the UK or Sweden. But in the end, they decided to buy the shares through a jointly owned Dutch holding company, as they would then only have to pay 5% under the Canadian tax treaty with the Netherlands, provided the Dutch holding company received the dividends as the beneficial owner. Volvo and Henleys agreed that at least 80% of the profits would be distributed to them. The dispute focused on whether the Dutch holding company was the beneficial owner of the Canadian dividends and was therefore entitled to the reduced 5% withholding tax. The court held that the Dutch holding company was the beneficial owner of the dividends. As the treaty with the Netherlands did not define the term beneficial owner, the term had to be interpreted according to the ordinary meaning of the words, their technical meaning, and the meaning under domestic or international law. So the judge referred to things like dictionaries and the official commentaries to the OECD Model Tax Convention. The OECD commentaries made clear that an agent, nominee, or a conduit was not the beneficial owner. The judge's main conclusion was that the beneficial owner is the person who receives the dividends for their own use and enjoyment. And assumes risk and control of the dividends received. The judge also described a conduit as a person with absolutely no discretion as to the use or application of the funds. He added that the shareholders' agreement did not affect his conclusion, as the Dutch company was not a party to that agreement, so the dividends were not automatically passed on to the shareholders.